So let me do the last video I'm going to make today. I'm going to talk about real basic between the market and firm with factor markets. So the perfectly competitive market and firm and product markets, the monopoly and product markets. Now we're looking at factor markets real quickly. And I'll put some more videos. I'll link onto this page so you can sort of have them at your disposal. But just as a review real quickly, here is the firm. Instead of having prices on the Y, we have wages, right? It can also be like if it's a capital good, it can be the price of the capital good. And then on the x-axis, we have quantity of labor. Okay, if it's a capital good, it can be the quantity of those capital goods. And you just have the supply and demand of the factor, or sometimes it's called the resource market. And so the demand, the downward sloping, supply is upward sloping. So this would actually be the supply of labor, like we're supplying labor and the firms are demanding labor. And so where those two forces hit, this becomes the market wage, right? And then here is the quantity of labor in that market. Okay, and markets for wages tend to be pretty competitive. And so you're going to have the graph. They're getting the wage from this market. The wage they're going to pay their workers will come from the market. So we call this our MRC, our marginal resource cost, or as Savannah said yesterday when she asked about MFC, or Jade, one of you guys asked about MFC, so marginal factor cost. That's fine too. It doesn't matter. Okay, so that's going to be kind of that this firm can hire as many as they want at that one price. But they're only going to hire to where it's going to make sense for them to make profit. So they're going to, essentially this would be the supply of labor, and the demand for labor would be our MRP, or our marginal revenue product. How much money is every single worker bringing in, right? So they're going to hire the point where those two things hit each other, right? If you only, let's say it's 10 workers. Well, if you hired only 6 workers, they're making this much revenue, and the cost is right here. So that means that all of this area here, they can hire more workers and bring in more profit, right? If they're down here, let's say 12, it is true that the workers bringing in revenue, but the cost is all the way up here, so they're losing money. So maybe the cost is $100,000 an employee, but they're only bringing in $70,000. So while they are bringing in revenue, it's not enough revenue, right? Up here, maybe the cost of the labor or of the resource is $100,000, but they're bringing in $120,000. So that worker's bringing in $20,000 worth of profit. So we want to hire where MRC hits MRP, or as close to it as we can on this side of it. You'd rather make a little bit extra profit than a little bit less loss. So that's what happens with that. Much like in the perfectly competitive product market, if there is a change in on this side of the supplier demand for the workers. So for example, if there is a demand change or a supply change in the product market, remember we call this the demand for labor here, we call it derived demand, because we're only needing those workers because people want to buy that crap, right? If no one wants to go into a restaurant, then they're not going to hire anybody, because if that restaurant sucks, there's no demand for that restaurant, therefore there's no demand to hire employees, right? So if we have an increase in demand of the good, then that will mean we need to supply more workers for that good, right? So if we change the demand or supply of these workers, that will change the MRC for the firm. So when the wage changes here, it changes. So let's say, for example, we have an increased demand for workers because people are buying more crap of whatever product. So here is our new wage, and then here is our new MRC2. Now, as you can see, the wage is going up, so they're actually Okay, so it just sort of randomly stopped there. So you can see, I don't know how far you got behind, but you can see if the demand for the product goes up, that brings the wage up, and then that will mean that they are going to be, the firm will be demanding less people because the wage is higher, right? When the wage is higher, then they can't hire as many people because it takes more revenue to bring that in. So that's when MRC would move, is if something over here changed, okay? But we also know that MRP is the price of the actual good times the MPP, the marginal physical product. So if one of those things changes, the price of the good changes, or if the price of, if the efficiency of the worker changes, then that might shift MRP this way, or it might shift MRP that way, and it wouldn't necessarily change the wage. It would just change, for the firm, it would just change how many workers it can hire. Now, if all of society got more efficient, then that would, and we became more efficient workers, and that would increase wages over time. But just for this one firm, if we increase MRP going this way, then we would hire more workers. We just wouldn't change the wage. Okay? So that is the basis for that.